Hey, hello everybody. So now we're at a point where we want to talk about alcohol in your brain and specifically how many drinks affect certain functions of the brain. This is interesting stuff. In the process, we're going to talk about some of the general brain functions. I'm not a neuroscientist, but I know some basic functioning of the brain. And so we're not going to get super specific, but you'll get the idea. And one of the lasting impressions that I'd like you guys to have from this discussion is what are the true dangers of getting involved in consuming large amounts of alcohol at one time, like for instance in drinking games. Okay, chances are at some point in your life, all of you are going to be offered the opportunity to be involved in a drinking game. All right, so let's take this quick journey through this brain and keep in mind that this brain, as I'm discussing with numbers and things like that, with blood alcohol content, would be the average brain for the average size human being on planet Earth, which would be about 150 pounds. So if a person were under 150 pounds, like most teenagers are, then their BAC level would most likely be higher. If they're over 150 pounds, then their BAC level, blood alcohol content level, would be even lower. All right? So we're going to start right here in the frontal lobe of the brain. The brain's actually divided into several different lobes. And we're right in the frontal lobe, right behind your forehead, basically. And there's a lot of things, important functions going on right there. Okay? So I'm seated right now, but I might have to get up to write a couple things in, so I'll apologize ahead of time if I block your vision temporarily. All right? So on the arrowed lines, I'm going to put the number of drinks that the person has consumed. In the little thought bubble, I'm going to put the brain functions that are being affected. All right, so right now, we're at 1 to 2 drinks. Okay, so now earlier I mentioned to you that for each drink in an hour that a person has, their BAC level will go up 0.02 for each drink. So this person would be at a 0.02 to a 0.04 blood alcohol level. So if it were the brain of an adult driving a vehicle, they couldn't be arrested for operating under the influence. They could be dealt with for being impaired, but they couldn't be arrested for OUI. Okay? But here's what starts to become affected. They don't lose complete control of these things at this point, but here's what becomes affected. Very busy part of the brain. Your ability to reason, which is kind of like predicting the future. You know, if I do this, then this could happen, and then that could happen. I don't want to do that. Well, you start to lose that ability, which is one of the reasons why people who are drinking alcohol will start to do unpredictable things. Couple that with the fact that that little voice of caution that tells you right from wrong and helps to keep you alive, where you get that funny feeling if your friends are asking you to do something dangerous and you kind of have this sense like, this doesn't feel right. Well, that's controlled in that part of the brain, and you're going to start to kind of smother that voice. It won't be as loud. And for some people, that voice isn't very loud to begin with, and they don't need much alcohol in order to get themselves into trouble, if you know what I mean. All right, so reason, caution. These next two things kind of go together. Intelligence and memory. So you can't show how smart you are unless you can retrieve things from your memory. All right, and alcohol is famous for interrupting people's ability to remember things, both short-term memory and long-term memory. Long-term memory, especially if a person continues to abuse alcohol for a good chunk of their life. Okay, so they're at a 0.02 to a 0.04, but yet they keep on going. They have more drinks. So now, I'll block your view just for a second. Now we're going to go to 3 to 4 drinks. And we're at a 0.06 to a 0.08. So we're teetering at that point where this person could be arrested for operating under the influence. They're right on that borderline. And this upper middle part of your brain has everything to do with self-control and judgment. So, if I didn't make this clear earlier, the further we get into this process, the more and more you lose control over these things that we're talking about right now. So, self-control has to do with what are called inhibitions. We all have inhibitions, things that we've learned throughout our lifetime that tells us right from wrong, whether we should be doing things and whatnot. And the alcohol now is going to take those inhibitions away. So this is where a personality could start to change. A person would start doing things they normally would not do. So losing a little self-control and the judgment thing, yeah, judgment on decision making, but I'm talking about being able to judge where your body is in relationship to things around you. So you may start to bump into things and trip on things and knock things over at this point. Your depth perception is thrown off. If you're driving a car or a motorcycle or a four-wheeler or a snowmobile, your ability to judge the speed that you're traveling starts to get thrown off, and that could affect the outcome dramatically. So 3 to 4 drinks, starting to get a fair amount of alcohol into the bloodstream now. All right, and now we're going to move back to what's called the occipital lobe of the brain, kind of in the back of the head area. All right, and we're going to move to 5 to 6 drinks now. So we're at a 0.10 to a 0.12 BAC level. And believe it or not, this is where the legal intoxication level used to be in Maine and around the country. They used to allow people to have 5 to 6 drinks in their bloodstream and still be driving around on the roads. Luckily, that has changed, and we've reduced it to 0.08. Many people, including me, would like to see this reduced to 0.04. No reason why an adult should be driving a vehicle if they've had any more than 2 drinks in an hour. I think a lot of people would agree. We'll see if it ever gets there. Okay, so reason, caution, intelligence, memory, self-control, and judgment. Again, the further that we get, the more these things are affected. But now we're at a point in your brain where your senses are now being dramatically reduced as far as their ability to give the brain the information that it needs. And that's what your senses are all about. They give your brain information to help you make the right decisions. So your sense of sight, touch, smell, hearing, and taste. And as you lose each of those things, there are little dangers that go along with each one. Like for sense of hearing, if you ever wondered if you've seen parties where people are actually drinking alcohol, you wonder why it gets so loud so quickly. It's because the people drinking the alcohol are literally starting to lose their ability to hear. So the music goes up, the talking gets louder, hollering, shouting, things like that. But if you're driving, say, in a vehicle and you can't hear certain things, like a fire truck siren or an ambulance coming, that could be a tragic situation there. But sense of vision, everything's going to get blurred. Your depth perception is going to be thrown off. Not a good scenario. And, let's say sense of touch. You lose your ability to feel things. And something I always mention at this point in the discussion is if you're losing your sense of touch and feeling, think about that in your mouth. Your tongue starts to go numb. Your throat starts to go numb. Your brain needs to be able to feel food as you're chewing it and going down through to coordinate the swallowing process so food doesn't go into your lungs. So what I'm saying is at this BAC level, you're going to dramatically increase the chances of possibly choking to death because of that little flap that's in there called the epiglottis. Can't coordinate the way it's supposed to. When you swallow, it slams shut on your windpipe, your trachea, and it prevents the food from going down. But add this much alcohol and it could be partially open, a piece of food slips in there and you're in trouble. All right, so senses are now being affected, but yet this brain goes on. And now they're at 7 to 8 drinks. they're at a 0.14 to a 0.16. They're teetering on having twice the amount of alcohol where the cutoff point is where they could be arrested for operating under the influence. Okay, now they're in a part of the brain that's very different. Up in the squiggly, lumpy part, this is called the cerebrum. This is called the cerebellum. This is where all the thought processes happen. Okay, but down here in your cerebellum, it has primary function of controlling the muscular system of your body. So this is where coordination and balance are affected. Basically, the person's staggering drunk at this point. And it may seem quite funny to watch a person in this condition, but if you really stop and think about it, they've lost control of their mind. They can't think for themselves. They can't even control their body. And this is where injuries due to falling are going to be much more likely. Broken bones, things like that. And there's nothing funny about that. And what if they're getting behind the wheel of a car at this point? Tragedy just waiting to happen. All right, but we have one more stop, okay? Let's say this brain got involved in drinking games, and they all of a sudden put 9 to 10 drinks into their body in a very short period of time, which could happen so easily in a drinking game. So if you're doing the math along with me, you know that they're at a 0.18 to a 0.20. And this part of your brain is known as the limbic system, and it controls vital functions. We're talking where your brainstem comes into the center part of your brain, basic raw emotions, love, hate, fear, anger, things like that. This could completely change the personality of the person who's consuming the alcohol. And this brainstem area is where your heartbeat is controlled and your breathing is controlled. So what I'm talking about right now is alcohol poisoning. All right, and anytime a human being gets their BAC level at a 0.20 or above, you could die of alcohol poisoning. Literally, the alcohol is a depressant, and it numbs the brain to the point where your brain stops telling your heart to beat, and it stops telling your lungs to breathe. And obviously, the result is tragic. And unfortunately, every year, quite a few teenagers make this mistake, and some adults as well, and they die of alcohol poisoning. So, not a pretty picture when you think about it. Just starting out, you're starting to lose your reason, caution, intelligence, and memory, and then your self-control and your judgment, and then your senses become affected. You're starting to become staggering drunk, your coordination and balance. And then you could actually lose control of your vital functions, and your life could end. So at some point, when you're at 21 years of age and older, you're going to have the legal right to consume alcohol. But I'll tell you what, there's a big difference between using alcohol and abusing alcohol. I bet some of your parents are really good role models on how to use alcohol and not abuse it, because it's their legal right. But there also are some adults who are not good role models, and you know what I mean. Okay, so that's our journey through alcohol and your brain. I hope it better helps you to understand the processes of what's going on when a person becomes intoxicated. Okay, so I'm going to turn things off right now, and we'll move on to some other things. Thanks for listening.